Strip it. Strip it. All right, leave it. Strip. Bump it. He's coming.
Oh my gosh.
He got it. Nice. All right, y'all. Welcome back to the Redfish Podcast, and we got a special one for you today. Not really going to follow along with what we normally do, and I say normally loosely. I know I got to get back to doing this more regularly. But 20 years of Hurricane Katrina. I'll post this on the 29th, and we had to do a special one for that. You know, that's a whole thing of everybody around here. You know, we live our life before and after the storm. And then I'm sure if you fish with us, me, Shane, or Dave, or anybody down here that's older than, I don't know, my age or older, you've heard them say that before or after the storm. That's kind of how I live my life. That's, I'm sure, how Shane and Dave do too. And you'll hear a lot about it today. You'll hear my story, Dave's story, and Shane's story. You know, Shane was going to talk about some of his experiences born and raised in Plaquemines Parish, and being one of the first guides back up and running down there, and it's pretty wild. So stay tuned. This will be a special one for you. 20 years of Hurricane Katrina. Did a lot to us, man. Over 1,800 people dead, and one of the most costly storms ever. One of the most deadly storms ever. Put 80% of the metro area underwater and completely destroyed anywhere from 90 to 98% of Lower Jefferson, all of St. Bernard and Plaquemines Parish, and then the Mississippi Gulf Coast. So, yeah, it's a lot. In hurricane season, it's always in the back of our minds all summer long. It's something we always think about, and we've had a few scares since then. Isaac and Ida was another bad one, and hopefully there's nothing ever like Katrina ever again, because it definitely changed our lives, changed everywhere for, the foreseeable future. So we're back with Dave, and I got Dave on. I got Shane coming in a little bit, y'all, and this is just going to be straight up Katrina related. 20 years since Hurricane Katrina tomorrow, August 29th. Most of y'all be listening to this as I post this on August 29th, Friday, August 29th. And that's Katrina Day. We all know it. We all live our lives, before and after a storm. I was pretty young when Katrina came. Dave and Shane are a little bit older than me, so they have a little bit more of a story. But, let's get into your story, Dave, because, like we've talked about, you're originally from Mississippi, came over here to work in the city, worked at the fly shop, and tell us how that is. Tell us pretty much your remembrance of Katrina.
Yeah, man, it's good to be back on. But when I moved to New Orleans, I actually worked as a security guard in the seminary, and actually had an opportunity to later on go to work at the fly shop in New Orleans, which was called Uptown Angler. I'm sure some people remember it, some people probably don't. Anyway, but I was working there when Katrina hit. I was working there with Alec Griffin, who actually guided some down here, and I grew up fly fishing a little bit, but moved down, was going to school, working there, and I remember going down on Saturday morning because I'd left my wallet at the fly shop, and so I called Alec, and he said, "Well, there ain't no sense in coming down here." He said, "I'm gonna kind of clean everything up, lock it up." And I said, "Well, I left my wallet, so I got to come back down there." So previous to that, we'd had to leave for a hurricane scare or two. Nothing would ever happen, and we would come back, pack up all our stuff, take it back home, and then bring it back. Nothing would ever happen. So when Katrina came along, I was like, "Man, I ain't loading up nothing. It's going to be fine." Well, I woke up that Saturday morning, and it just started dating my now wife. And I called her, and I said, "Hey, what are you doing?" She said, "Well, trying to figure out if we're still going to have this youth party thing tonight, like a luau." I said, "Oh, it's going to be a luau, all right." I said, I looked at the weather. I said, "Hey, this thing didn't move. It's coming. We need to roll." And so I asked her, I said, "I don't know what you're doing right now." I said, "But do you have gas in your car?" She said, "Yeah, it's gas." I said, "Is it full?" I said, "Whatever you do, you probably need to stop and go right now. Go fill your car up." And so, so she did that, and then helped Alec with a few things at the fly shop. And then it wasn't long, headed up the road thinking, no big deal is going to happen. But sure enough, watch this thing unfold. We wound up at my sister-in-law's house in Huntsville, and but kind of watch it unfold on TV and to see a shark swimming down I-10 from the video footage, it was pretty unbelievable. So I mean, just so much stuff I could talk about, even to the point of um, once it hit and all the flooding took place and, people were stealing everything and just trying to survive. It just kind of became a dire situation for a lot of people, never really knew how bad it could really get. But I remember, fast forward to when I got back to the shop with Alec and, people had broke in the shop and they kicked all the fly rods that was on the rack and broke them and just left them in the floor. Like all the
Jeez.
clothes were gone, and it was just unbelievable. But it's kind of jumping forward to after that's a month after, Katrina hit. But like watching it from on the TV in Huntsville was really unbelievable just to kind of like, see what was truly happening, how people were getting rescued with helicopters and all that kind of stuff. But so, I just kind of started fishing down here. So I don't know as much, didn't know as much about it as I do now. And I know Shane's probably got some stories he can tell how it looked down like in Port Sulphur and Venice and all, just like a bomb went off. That's the way it looked to the city. But yeah, man. So, kind of fast forward to a little bit after the storm, came back and, we were cleaning up at the shop and this and that. And you would see, believe it or not, I remember seeing some of the guys who were living on the street. A couple of them walked by with a pair of Patagonia Mara Walker boots on, and I was like, "Well, I know where those came from.
That's
Flats
awesome.
boots from the fly shop." And so, it was really. And I realized, you're like, man, people were just trying to survive.
Yeah.
I know some people were just looting and because they could, but people took clothes and all kind of stuff from the fly shop, and which was, I know Jim had insurance and covered a lot of that
Yeah, I
stuff.
mean, just
But yeah,
explain to people, and because I've watched some of one of the Katrina documentaries that was on Disney Plus, and I know there's another big one on Netflix that a bunch of my customers, I'm sure some of yours have been talking about it too. Explain to
yeah,
people, like in relation, I'd say the most notable thing that these things talk about is the Superdome. You know how all the people are at the Superdome. Explain people
oh yeah.
that aren't familiar with the geographically the city of where the fly shop was in relation to like the Superdome, the French Quarter, 17th Street Canal, all these areas that they talk about in these
Yeah.
documentaries.
So the fly shop was straight shot of probably close to three-quarters of a mile, maybe from the Superdome, maybe a mile. I don't know if it's quite that far, but it was. I guess that would actually be south of the Superdome.
Hmm.
And yeah, just to see that thing kind of unfold on TV, with people wading through the water and all that kind of stuff, just kind of the dire straits for people. And they're waiting for days and days and days to get bust out. People that were, had no way to get out of here. They were, busting them out. But yeah, the fly shop was about maybe a mile. I don't know if it's even quite that far, like I said, from the Superdome. But yeah, but to watch that on TV, where you just see people for days and days on end, and then city leaders or who knows where, like it's just like just it's just mass chaos. And so we get back, people would use the floor of the fly shop or the bathroom, and just trying to survive. But yeah, it's only about, I don't know. I've walked to a few Saints games from the store or when we were there, and it's probably, yeah, close to three-quarters of a mile. This little zone, it was at Camp and Julia, and of course, several blocks up to the Superdome. But
Yep.
yeah,
How much water do you remember the fly shop had?
I don't think we didn't have any water at the fly shop. No,
Oh,
it just
really?
depends on where you are in the
Yeah, because I
city.
guess the French Quarter stayed dry, and I guess that was the only other area that stayed dry. I mean, everything else was. That's the thing that I noticed in some of these documentaries, and I remember when I was a kid, and my mom and them watching the news was like, all the news crews were in the French Quarter, and they were like
Yeah,
reporting the next morning, oh, the city made it out unscathed. Everything was pretty much close to the river, didn't have much water in the city. What was it like coming back after to the shop? As far as like, did the shop reopen pretty quickly? And then the first fishing trip you remember coming
yeah, it
back
was a
after
little.
Katrina.
It was a little while before the shop opened. When I came back, it was probably, so we left right before it hit on Saturday. We left on Saturday. It hit on like Sunday night into Monday or whatever day it was. Um, I was able to come back. I don't think it was until like around the 1st of October I got to come back in the city, which I was
Hmm.
living in a dorm room at the seminary. And of course, I had like my bow and arrow and stuff there. I'd left.
Oh
I
yeah,
left a bunch of stuff
how is the
because I was like,
seminary after
so
Katrina?
we got lots of water on the seminary. So that's out in the east, off Gentilly out there. And so I had probably 2 feet of water in my dorm room. I was on the first floor, and the dorm, it's a raised up. It's an older building. It was probably 3 feet off the ground. My room was so probably 5 feet right there where I was, 5 feet of water.
Uh-huh.
And I put some stuff in like Rubbermaid containers. Well, it had floated up and like tipped over. And I remember like my fly fishing waders that I had used when I used to go up to the Smokies and the Appalachians, however you say that word. When I would go up there, when I was living in Mississippi, they just got flooded and ruined. Lost a bunch of shoes and stuff like that, books and kind of stuff like that. But like I said, I was in a dorm room. This was 20 years ago before I got married. I'd moved here to go back to school, like I said. But yeah, it was pretty unbelievable to roll in. But part of the campus where we were, the front end of it was higher. So actually, NOPD and some other groups used our student center is like a home base for a lot of operations. It used to be like a Dillard's apartment store, and they converted into like a school and like a student center. So it had a cafe and stuff like that. So they used that area to, as like a home base for certain operations and stuff like that. But yeah, it was really wild. Just when I remember driving in from the east, coming through Slidell, and then hitting the east, and it was just like pitch black dark. I came in the evening, and no lights, no power, and it was unbelievable. It's like a bomb went off.
That's what I remember the most was just complete utter darkness for everywhere
Yep.
you went. Even
Yeah.
fishing after in like November, going down a road, fishing in darkness.
Yeah. And of course, it's not one side of
And twin
the
span
twin
out.
span. You cut it basically all off the piling, and so they had it down to one lane, and like they just kind of like redone the road, so it was a pretty rough surface coming in. So it was really spooky coming in. And but I would come in and get a few things, and I think the shop was even open. I can't remember now. I think the shop was open, but I remember going fishing after Katrina, and the fishing was just on fire, man, because nobody was shrimping, nobody was crabbing, nobody was fishing. And then we got to go, like the fish were fat and happy. Kind of the same thing after like the oil spill in 2010. It was like nobody was shrimping, nobody was crabbing, and the fishing was just unbelievable. So yeah, it was really cool as far as the
Perfect.
fishing part of it. Not the storm, not so much, but
Well,
yeah, it was
yeah, I
awesome.
mean, you know what I always say, we can find the common denominator in every single occurrence of our fishery being good and bad. It's
Oh
always
yeah,
been humans for the most part. More than, I mean, there's a lot of things that factor into it, obviously, like we always talk about. But, when you talk about all these storms, you talk about BP, you talk about, all this stuff, we are the common denominator for the good and the bad. But, well, thanks
oh
for
yeah,
sharing all that with us, Dave. And I know it's
yeah, man. I'm
different for
down the
all of us,
road
you know.
and all that, so I don't know how clear this is going to sound
No,
down the road
I think it sounds great.
in
So,
Venice, and actually cooking some steaks out on the grill for me and my guy that's here this week doing some fishing. It's been pretty good. So yeah, I'm gonna finish this up and get back to it.
all right, well, we'll catch you back to it. So,
All
we're going to
right.
get Shane on now.
All right,
Let him.
steak master, pit master.
I'll leave it on. I'll let y'all record.
We'll let,
I'll just be quiet
okay.
while I'm doing this. Yeah.
We'll let Hello Kitty give his version
Oh,
of the
dude.
story.
Freaking Hello Kitty.
I got to figure out how to screen record on this. We're gonna start doing some videos with this, and it's just gonna be Shane the whole time.
Yeah.
All right, Shane. Well, I mean, you're the main reason of why I wanted to do this because, like I said, I was young. I mean, I have our story and my story of going all the way up to Connecticut and coming back and fishing and all that stuff. But I was young. I mean, what was it like for you, born and raised in Plaquemines Parish in Port Sulphur? And what was the deal?
Well, growing up down in Port Sulphur, I mean, when I was younger, they had before my time, they had some bad hurricanes before I was born, and then, growing up, we had hurricanes come through, but they weren't big, and we never left. I mean, we just didn't. I mean, if they weren't, and like I said, I was young, so I couldn't tell you how big, but I can remember like Category 1 hurricanes just hanging out, just hey on the levee, leaning into the wind. Well, fast forward to Katrina, and when you saw that thing coming, and obviously, technology now is better than it was back in, the 50s, 60s, 70s when I was born, and even early 80s. And you saw the size of that storm coming into the Gulf, and you said, that ain't good, Larry, because, I mean, there was almost no way we weren't going to get impacted some way or the other. If that storm, the way it was so big, just being in the central Gulf of Mexico, it was obviously going to give us some issues. So, like, I was actually fishing every day up to it, and I think I fished maybe the 2 days before landfall we fished. Um, and everybody's getting out of town, and we just I was like, ah, man, we looking at that storm. I said, all right, we're gonna have to go. Well, so the next day we decided we were gonna leave, and we ended up going to the west, and the traffic was horrible. At the time, the company my wife worked for, they had an office in Lafayette, so we ended up just she knew a woman there, and we ended up just staying with her. And then you're waiting to see what's going to happen, and then you find out it makes landfall, and you start getting reports back, and everybody saw what was going on in New Orleans, so you really knew it wasn't going to be good. And then it made landfall basically in Plaquemines Parish. A lot of the media, especially the national media, they always just say, hey, landfall in New Orleans, but the truth is it made landfall in Plaquemines Parish. And
Yeah, I mean, it went right
that's
straight through Port Sulphur, right?
yeah, and honestly, I can't.
Port Sulphur.
Yeah, it was in that Empire, whatever. I don't know exactly where the exactly track went. I can't remember, and I mean, I should know, but I just forgot.
I mean, either
But
way, a storm like that, 40, 50 miles, it didn't matter which way.
no, it didn't. And I mean, you start getting reports, and you're like, uh-oh. And then once you first come back down, you're like, whoa, yeah, not good, Larry. I mean,
So, well, just to backtrack real quick, to before we get into, Plaquemines, so y'all went to Lafayette. Well, what about Rita? I mean, that's the way Rita went, right?
yeah. See, I don't
Did y'all make
remember.
it back before Rita? Or?
Yeah. See, it's kind of a blur because what happened was,
It's everybody forgets about Rita because of Katrina, but Rita was a hell of a storm for the west side of the
yeah,
state.
like I said, we went and stayed with this lady for a few days, and then another girl she knew. I'm trying to think how it worked. We might have went and stayed in this apartment for a few days, and then the girl said she had some other family members that needed that apartment. So we ended up because you couldn't find anything.
Oh, yeah.
That's the thing. I mean, everybody's got everything booked, and then we ended up staying with this other lady, and so it's kind of a blur, because you don't know, you're not there, you don't know what's happening, you don't know how bad it was, you don't know if your house. I mean, we lived in Marrero on the West Bank at the time, so not in Plaquemines, so you're not sure exactly what's left or what you're going to find, right? So I don't even remember what happened with Rita because yeah, she did come through, but I don't remember. It's a blur.
Yeah.
Because after that,
What
when I came.
What were you hearing? Like, I mean, before you came back, before you made a decision, okay, we got to get back and just figure out. I mean, did you talk to anybody down there, or did you just drive back and see with your two eyes?
Well, like for instance, like my in-laws, they lived a little bit close. They lived on the West Bank, kind of in the Harvey area, and they stayed. Well, they flooded, and they didn't flood because of like levee breaches. The drainage couldn't keep up, and maybe some of the pumps went down, so they flooded. And they decided they were going to stay, and they flooded, and they ended up coming and meeting us. So we knew it got bad on the West Bank in places.
Yeah.
We didn't know about our house. But what happened with it? But I was getting reports from people down the road. There was no power, right? There was no power.
There was no power for
nothing
months.
down the road. So I mean, but you were getting reports from people saying, "Hey, it pretty much demolished the lower end of Plaquemines Parish." And then I was fortunate enough to come. My brother-in-law, his father, who's passed away since, he was a state rep. So we came back in a few days after Katrina, just literally to come check our houses, get like tape up the refrigerators if they were nasty or whatever, because we knew we probably weren't going to have power. So we're coming back in, man, and it was like it was wild because we're coming in on the interstate. I think we came interstate, and we're passing the Superdome, and there's Black Hawk helicopters hovering down. There's people like, by the Superdome. I mean, you can
Jeez.
tell everything's no power, right?
Mm-hmm.
Closed.
There was still
We're
water
going down.
everywhere, right? Or what had it
Well,
gone down some at that time?
I'd be lying if I told you because I know it wasn't it was inside of a few days later.
Yeah.
I just don't remember. You think you would because I wasn't physically down there in it, right?
Yeah.
So we're going across the Mississippi River Bridge, and we go all the way to Belchase Highway, and we start going down Belchase Highway, and there ain't nobody.
Jeez.
I mean, like, you're going down Belchase Highway, and he's doing like 80 miles an hour. There ain't nobody on the road. I think we passed one cop car, maybe at Terry Parkway. No lights, no nothing. And, we're hauling ass. I'm like, wow, this is just crazy. It's like a movie. They ain't like a zombie apocalypse. There ain't nobody there.
Jeez.
And then we come to Plaquemines. And you get to Plaquemines, and right there by the bridge in the tunnel, they had a blockade, like a police blockade. And they had guys out there, local guys, sitting like guard with guns. They wasn't letting nobody come into Plaquemines because it was so bad. And I'm looking around, and they got guys. I'm not lying to you now. They got guys with goose guns, shotguns, rifles. I mean, it's like a militia. And I look over there, and I said to myself, they gave him a gun? I said, I ain't worried about nobody stealing nothing down here because anybody that tries to get by these guys is going to take a dirt nap and they're going to ask questions later. So I wasn't worried about no looting happening, But yeah, so we came into Belchase, and you had issues with trees and down power lines and stuff in Belchase, and my house in Marrero was fine, but I never really truly got to see the devastation until, and maybe it was a week or so later. We came back down, and actually, I went with George Haydell from Metro Boating. We wanted to go down there and check on some boats and stuff. So we actually got an airboat that we hired an airboat, and we went down to Port Sulphur. We drove through Port Sulphur, and I'm thinking, I can't remember. It may have been a little bit longer than that. Like I said, it's a fuzzy timeline. But anyway, when we got down there, we got in the airboat, and then we're driving down, and we actually came into the road. Like, we came in like right there at Empire before the Empire Bridge. They had a break, and so we're like riding in an airboat going down Highway 23, which was wild. I mean, they got mullet jumping on Highway 23, and we're in the airboat going down the river.
That's crazy.
And we got to, there's houses all over. Like, I remember driving down. There's houses on the road. People you knew, like you had these old crawl space houses that were just got moved, and they're sitting on the road. And
well, they had the big boats at Empire, like the pogie boats, the shrimp boats on the road.
Yeah, down on the bridge, at the base of the bridge. And then when you go down to Venice, they had all those big double riggers on the levees and big barges on the Mississippi River levee. Jeez. And you get in, and it's crazy because when we got down to Venice, the salvage companies that are, that's what they do, right? They make a living salvaging stuff. Well, those guys must sail. As soon as they see the hurricane where it's going, they're right on its tail. And as soon as it's all clear, they're in there. Because we got down to Venice, and they had big salvage tugs, like hooking up to like big double riggers that were up in the trees, like by Red Pass and all.
Jeez.
And just yanking them suckers out the trees with these big tugs. And
wow.
It was like, wow, man. I mean, all these big boats. I mean, boats that you're saying, that's some serious water when you got a big double rigger that's sitting on the top of the levee by the jump.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking 40-plus foot boats. I mean,
big
60,
double rigger.
70
big enough
boats.
To where you ain't towing that with a pickup and putting it up there, right?
No.
I mean, it's like, wow. You're looking at this thing, and you're like, and just the whole, it's just, it was basically.
I remember too, like, I mean, just going off of, I mean, I didn't make it down to Plaquemines. I was a kid, like I said, but until like, around Thanksgiving that year, fishing wise. But, some of the most iconic photos that people are going to recognize, as far as just to give them some geographical sense, was if you look up Plaquemines for Katrina, and I'm sure these have been shared all over planet Earth, but like the Dollar General photo with that big 18-wheeler on top of it. That
Yeah,
big
yeah.
box truck in the tree from
Yeah,
Empire, and the boats
yeah,
everywhere.
yeah, yeah. I was gonna say that they had that box truck on the they had the box truck in the top of an oak tree right there on the old road in
Mm-hmm.
Empire, right before
Oh, and then the
Delta.
water tower too. I don't know
Yeah,
which
the
one it
water
was.
tower in Buras. It was Buras water tower was on the ground. I mean, it's just so much devastation, and you're like, wow. And then I actually, and we can, whatever you want to talk about. I mean, I actually, me and another guy, we ended up doing cleanup work, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we ended up,
Yes, I
getting
mean
like a
nobody at that time was thinking about fishing. There was no fishing on their
no.
mind.
Well,
You
no,
know,
no, no. There was no fishing. I mean, all like and like Dave said earlier. I mean, look, all of the infrastructure was gone.
no
There was no
power, no
infrastructure.
road, no
Now,
nothing.
I'll say this. I can say this. I was fishing a little bit. I
Mm-hmm.
did start doing some fishing. Um, and I was fortunate enough that, and again, the timeline, I mean, I can't remember how all this transpired, but I know for sure that I was the first guide back fishing because myself and Brian Carter, where he actually had secured a mobile home, a trailer right in like Jesuit Bend
Oh wow.
that he was living in because I think his house that he was in got tore up. And his landlord said, "Hey, I'm bringing in some more." And he said, "Well, hey, can we rent one?" And he's like, "Well, he's like, yeah, if you want." So me and him went in halves, and we were renting one, and we would put our customers in there.
Wow.
And at the time, you couldn't go. And like I said, the timeline is I know I keep harping on that, but I just can't remember how all this transpired. But my people would stay at them in Jesuit Bend.
Mm-hmm.
I'd meet them in the morning, and they'd follow me down. I lived in Bellchase at the time.
Yeah.
It's my wife now, but at the time, we weren't married. Her house was in Marrero. I lived in Bellchase. But anyway, my customers I'd meet them in Jesuit Bend. They'd follow me down. Right when you pass up the Woodland Plantation, there was a roadblock, like a little checkpoint. And then
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to show my little badge I had. I'm not a badge, but like a Pracken resident thing.
Yeah.
And then we'd go fishing.
Wow.
And the fishing was off the hook, like Dave said, as good as it gets. And I mean, we can talk about that later, but there's no doubt unintended consequence of something like that when you don't have anybody, no shrimp and no crab and no anything. The fishing was unbelievably good, and it stayed that way for quite some time after Katrina.
What was it like? I mean, obviously you were guiding before and after, so like you had trips on the books, and I mean, what was that like with clients?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like, hey, we got smashed. So a lot of people, you got two types of people. You got some that are like, look, well, can we come? Because we'd like to come. We notice how you make your living, and then we want to support you. And then I said, early on, it was like, well, I don't know what we're going to be doing because, so I mean, for right in the middle, right in the beginning, you kind of just, you just stop because you don't have any place to put people. But once you get that established, then you tell people, well, hey, I got some place for you to stay, but it may be a little, you got to bring your own food, and then, you got to drive a little bit. So some people, and some people just didn't want to be around the devastation, So, um, so yeah, I started fishing, and I had a few clients coming, and like I said, we were doing cleanup work too, and but the fishing itself. So like I said, it was so good that it was easy. It was just getting people to come. I mean, the problem was like I was cleaning fish like in my behind my house in Bellchase. I mean, I put a damn table up.
Yeah.
I put a table. What I do was I put a table up. I cleaned my fish behind my house in Bellchase, and then they'd either stop by on the way out and get them, because they were staying further down, or
Yeah.
I'd bring them to them the next morning, and I'd just take the carcasses and I'd bring them down the road and dump them, the next morning, or I'd go on the back, behind Bellchase and dump them in the river or something like that. So, you had to hustle, to make it happen, but the fishing was so good. I mean, you really didn't even have to go. You could catch all the fish you wanted right there in the jump in Venice. And then a few of the workers started fishing, like the cleanup workers, like in
Mm-hmm.
the salvage crews and all. They started coming. So I'm like, man, well, I'm gonna go on down the river to way down river. Well, I started going down there, and the fishing was out of sight. But then I start thinking, I'm like, man, if I break down here, I'm in trouble
yeah.
because you didn't have. I mean, I don't have a cell phone service down there very often anyway. But then you didn't have none. There wasn't no oil field boats around. There wasn't nothing. So you saying, man. And so, I fished a little bit, but it was just tough. Tough getting that back up and running because just the marinas were shut down. The
Yeah, I mean,
infrastructure.
no
That took a
marinas,
while.
no gas
Yeah.
down the road, no power.
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
it's
I had to
crazy.
tow my boat, and then I started leaving my boat, but I bring gas cans. So I mean, it was definitely, you had to, you had to hustle to do it, and I was fortunate enough because I live close, and I was able to make it happen. But when I never forget like the first day back. I can't remember why or when we went back down there before I did my first trip. I had Nash Roberts took a ride with me, and we went running down to Venice, and we went down by Southeast Pass, really between Loomis and Southeast Pass. We call that it used to be called Francois, and it still is. But so I'm running, and we come out into the open, and I like stop, and he's like, "What are you stopping for?" I said, "Well, I know where I'm at, but I don't know where I'm at because
Jeez.
it had totally like there used to be." Little bayous going into little ponds, with a canal, another pond, and that Katrina just leveled all that. I mean, all it
Yeah.
was scattered canes all over the place, so it was
Jeez.
like you had to get your bearings, so
What about like Port Sulphur? I mean, Port Sulphur just
um
got wrecked and flattened, I'm sure, huh?
yeah, but it was funny because the marsh in Port Sulphur, to the best of my recollection, it got changed like by the beaches and all that, but
Yeah.
the interior marsh, because it's so short, that interior
Oh, it
marsh,
probably
I
did
think
pretty
that
well.
water comes up so high, so the water comes up so high so quick, even before the main brunt of the storm gets
Yeah.
there. So think about it. When the storm's first coming in, we get 2 or 3 feet of water with a
Everything's
tropical
underwater.
storm, right?
Yeah.
So I think everything was underwater there, so you didn't see the changes, the drastic changes like you did to the canes down in Venice,
Oh wow,
So
yeah. That and there's just
um,
sand that moves around down there.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, it definitely wiped out a lot of habitat in Venice, and um, it changed a lot of people's lives. I mean, I had friends that, I still got friends that live down in South Plaquemines, but before Katrina, I had a lot more, and people just said, I'm not doing this again
I don't
because
blame
they
them.
lost everything. They
That's
got
what I
flooded
try
out.
and explain to clients is like, I have a limited memory before Katrina because I was young, but like we grew up fishing Point LaHash and just talking about Beshel's Marina before Katrina was
Hmm.
just crazy, night and day
Yeah,
difference down there.
yeah. I
And
mean,
people used to actually live down there around the marina, and now it's vacant, and even Plaquemines
yeah.
Parish. I mean, what's your take on, I'm sure we can look up a number somewhere, but what's your take on like the people that were down living in Plaquemines Parish, at least down Highway 23, as opposed to after Katrina?
Yeah, I never was. I'm not like a population guy as far as numbers go.
Or just like a percentage of
But
people you think
well,
never
oh
came
yeah. There's
back.
no doubt. I mean, I would say it's no doubt. It was probably at least 50% less or more.
Wow.
I mean, no doubt about it. I mean, it just everybody got wiped out. I mean,
Yeah.
everything was demolished. I mean, the only people's houses who made it, if maybe they were raised,
Mm-hmm.
and even if you were, it's weird how those things work. I mean, you might just like you see tornado activity. You might see a house right here,
Mm-hmm.
2 or 3 houses with nothing left, and then one's on each side of it standing, nothing wrong with them. So it was kind of the same thing with Katrina, but in Katrina, you not only had the wind, you had the water. So, if your house was raised up in the air a little bit, you might have been fortunate and you might have made it, but very few, and I don't know what the numbers are, but I would say very few houses escaped not being really, really, really demolished
Yeah, I
or
mean, it's
messed
pretty
up.
much, like a bomb went off down there.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. I
like the
mean, it,
city
it
had the
was,
water, and I mean, where I lived in Kenner, we had
yeah,
water, but like down there was just, I mean,
Yeah, down
nothing
there
left
it
standing.
was like I said, it was like two-story, two-story houses. What I would say were maybe I don't know, maybe 2,000, maybe I don't know, maybe 2,000 square feet or 2,500 square feet,
Hmm.
with two stories. And I mean, they're sitting on on the highway. I mean, they moved,
It's
they
crazy.
floated onto the highway,
What do you
so you
think
got
the
to go
height of the
around them.
water was like in, Port Sulphur, Eurus Empire, Venice?
I don't know. I've heard different estimates. I mean, I've heard from like 15 to 30 feet, so I don't
Jeez.
know,
Yeah.
and it depends on if you mean, like,
From
of
the
course,
road, from the
like
marsh.
when water gets up to a levee, it's going to build up, right? So
Hmm.
you're going to but if just a straight open spot where you get a storm surge, 16 feet, 15 to 20 feet of water is a lot.
Oh
You know
yeah.
what I'm saying? I mean, that's a whole lot. I mean, um, yeah, it changed everything. I mean, like when I would drive down there in the mornings, there was no power. And I grew up, I was born and raised down there. I've been driving up and down that highway my entire life. So when I first started going back down there, it was just so eerie because I'd go early in the morning because, I'm going fishing. Well, I'd be driving and it was dark and I would kind of like not know where I was, right? I mean, I didn't know
Hmm.
kind of like, and I don't, at the time, I didn't have GPS or
GPS.
anything in the car or anything like that. So
Yeah.
um, I was like, man, where am I? It's kind of weird.
Jeez.
Like, you don't know, you've been driving this road your whole life, and then because you don't have the same landmarks or the lights,
Yeah.
you can't tell where the heck you're at, So, um, yeah, just wild, man. I mean, it's not, they bring it up, people we bring it back up, on anniversaries, and you think you saw what it did, and you say, man, you saw what it did to the marsh downriver, and I'm going to tell you, we had a lot more marsh then than we have now.
For
I
sure.
mean, talking about disasters, um, I would I would say it's hard to quantify because, like I said, there was a lot more marsh pre-Katrina. But fast forward to the BP oil spill, and that oil rolling back into those canes accelerated the rate of erosion from that disaster. And so now we've got very little left down there. So you kind of say to yourself, you get another Katrina, and you might not have anything but the little bit of marsh where the river is and a couple of passes, and that's going to be it. I mean, for what we do for a living, it's concerning because you know, if you don't have the habitat, you don't have the fishery, and unfortunately, anyone that knows anything about this area knows that we're like the we're like if you had to look up, if you look on the dictionary and look up coastal erosion, they just all they can say is Southeast Louisiana, Plaquemines Parish. That's the worst it is anywhere.
Oh
So,
yeah. Yeah, I mean it's
um,
crazy. Like I said, I was young with Katrina, and I remember just things changing so much. Like Scarsdale and Delacroix. I mean, I always tell
yeah,
people and show people Google images of that. I mean,
yeah,
hundreds of thousands of acres, literally in 6 hours, gone. And that's
yeah.
just, I mean, Scarsdale's a prime example. But like, I was still young and didn't remember as much. I just remember like, it being this crazy, crazy long trip, coming home to nothing. I learned how to hang sheetrock at a very young age because there's nobody to
Yeah.
do any work anywhere.
Well,
But
yeah, and that's like, and I keep, like I said, it's crazy because I lived this, and and look, trust me, I'm thankful because I had my roof. I mean, we got roof damage, right? I mean,
yeah,
I was at the time I had my apartment I was living in. My girlfriend had her house, because we kind of split between those two. And actually, that was kind of catalyst for me moving. This might have been why I ended up marrying my wife. Is that I wasn't really staying in my apartment that much because I was always by her house. So my landlord said, "Hey, if you're not going to be there, we got some people that need it. I
yeah,
mean, they didn't have any house." I said, "Well, hey," I told her, I said, "Hey, if you want me, you got me." So she right now she probably says, "I wish I wouldn't have," but here we are. But yeah, I mean, it was it's wild. I mean, you see all the changes, and like I was doing cleanup work, like I said, and my
mm-hmm,
timeline's all over. But I was just, you were trying to want, part of it was, look, you see all these people I knew, I've been knowing forever,
Mm-hmm.
and you're doing this cleanup work, and people are saying, because we were doing actually like demos, and
Yeah.
we were scraping properties clean,
Wow.
right? So some people, they still had houses. It wasn't houses. It might have been rubble, but
Yeah.
it's still their house, man. And
Yeah.
and they got stuff in there they want to get. They don't want
Oh
to.
yeah.
It's hard to let go of that. So you got people, and you pull up on this address because you would just get addresses to where you had to go do this work, and you might have not known their address by heart. Like I don't know your address, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I pulled up and saw you, I'd be like, well, damn, this is Ty's house.
Mm-hmm.
So, and people were saying, man, I want to, I'm fighting with the insurance because it was such a big thing about, some people didn't have good insurance, or they didn't, or the insurance company was, didn't want to pay them.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it was a mess. I mean, you got people crawling around in rubble. That's all they've ever known, and they're trying to get family keepsakes, and
Yeah.
it was. We helped. We did make some money doing it. We which offset not fishing, but man, it's just I would not want to be. Everybody probably knows you make a lot of money during damages. I mean, disasters, because the government's throwing money at that to try to get everybody whole. Well, I would not want to be doing that every day. I would not want to be in that profession, because just
Yeah.
being around that devastation, and that it's you gotta it's tough to be around that day in and day out. And I did it for months, man. I was very
Jeez.
happy when it got back up to where we had more facilities down the road,
Yeah.
and they had places for people to stay, and we could get back to fishing full time.
Jeez. Yeah. Well, I mean,
Crazy.
how long? How long you think? I mean, I still don't think there's a normal to today's standard 20 years later, but what was like the normal backed up and running to where people, were coming down fishing, everybody, guides were back fishing? I mean, you think months, years? I mean,
It was months. I mean, it was months and months. And I mean, I really, part of when you ask me that question right now, I'm sitting here and saying, am I that old and that forgetful? Because I
well, I think
lived
it's
it,
a
and I
lot of
can't
just a
tell you.
blur. I mean, like I said,
Yeah,
I was
it
young.
is.
I was young, and I mean, it's like 3, 4 months of my life that I think all happened in one week. And I'm sure my mom would
Yeah.
say the same. I mean, it was just me, my two brothers, and my mom, and a dog. Like, she's like, I'm sure it was all a blur for her, too. I mean, how else do you
Yeah.
even deal with crap like that?
Yeah, and I guess, it also was okay. So it happened in August.
Mm-hmm.
So August comes, and then, because I'm trying to think about all this timeline about how I was doing the cleanup work and then doing the fishing. But I think it was like, it happened in August. So we had that September, it might have been a little bit, and then I probably was back to fishing a little bit, and then October, the fall's really good fishing, so I
Mm-hmm.
took advantage of that. Well, once you got into the winter time, it was, we didn't really have the kind of, we didn't have, the winter. Once the winter time got here, it really slowed, because there just wasn't the accommodations, and there wasn't as many people wanting to come when it got real cold. So maybe I really focused on the cleanup work, and then when the spring rolled around, and I mean, like I said, it's you would have think, I knew we were going to be talking about this, but now I sit here today and I say, well, where did that year or so of my life go as far as like what's the chronological order? Because I can't even tell you when I was doing what. I just
Yeah.
remember I did it. I did cleanup work. I did fishing. People come up to me and say, "Hey, man, I need to get this cleaned off. I'm going to see." So I'd try to go hustle and find their address and tell the people, "Look, man, these guys, they're ready to do something. Let's clean this off."
Yeah.
I mean, but yeah, it's changed the face of everything down there, because a lot of people never came back. I mean, hey, for instance, look at the schools.
Yeah, I was just about
You
to
know,
say it. I'd use it. The
I,
school, a lot of anybody that's fished with us has definitely launched behind the school in
yeah,
Port Sulphur at
yeah.
least
So,
once.
so before Katrina, they had three schools. They
Mm-hmm.
had Port Sulphur High School, which I graduated from. Halfway down, about 20 something miles, they had Buras High School, and then all the way at the end, they had Boothville Venice High School. That was pre-Katrina. Well, after Katrina, they didn't have enough people. They didn't have enough kids, and the schools were messed up. So they put modular buildings in Port Sulphur, and they consolidated everything into what is called South Plaquemines. And, fittingly, the name of they are the South Plaquemines Hurricanes, right? So all those kids were going to school in modular buildings by which was Port Sulphur High School. And when they finally rebuilt the schools, they rebuilt the one big one in Buras, and they called it South Plaquemines High School. And then right there, when we launched in Port Sulphur, is South Plaquemines Elementary. So you had three schools that turned to one school and two elementaries. You see, so
Yeah, that's a great population assessment right there. I mean,
yeah. I mean,
geez.
and like I said, I don't know what the population is, but it's nowhere near, and it was already changing down there. It wasn't like it was,
Really?
Yeah, I mean, look, back in the 60s, 70s, up to the early 80s, the oil industry, if
Just
you were
booming.
anybody in the oil industry, you were in Plaquemines Parish. I
Yeah,
mean, many a big companies got their start there. And when that started changing a little bit, in the 80s, people started moving, their jobs took them elsewhere. So you didn't have quite the population you did. But still, like I graduated in 89, and I mean, there were still three high schools and they were packed. And I mean, you had people packing you know, football stadiums on Friday nights, and I mean little league football every afternoon. All the fields were packed with people playing little league football, practicing for little league sports. And that all after Katrina, that all
nothing.
changed. And you go down there today, and you just don't see that because they just
No,
don't
you
have the
just see
population.
overgrown brush lots and everything with
Yeah,
LNG now,
it is
and
a shame. I mean, yeah,
it's
it's a
crazy.
shame because it was a great small. I mean, all grow. I mean, as growing up as a boy. Now I would say, I don't know how many girls would say this, but I mean, growing up as a boy, loving to hunt and fish, I couldn't think of a better place in the world to grow up than Plaquemines Parish because some of the best fishing in the world for what type we do. And then duck hunting, I'd have to argue and say at that time it was probably some of the best duck hunting in the world. And I mean, we had other stuff to do, and then we had people. I mean, yeah, we didn't have a lot of big things like they have, in the cities nowadays. But we had more things back in the 70s, 80s, and before Katrina than we got now. I mean,
For sure.
the population
More
didn't
than
lend
just
itself.
than one grocery store and a Subway.
Yeah. Yeah, the population didn't lend itself to the place rebuilding back. I mean,
Yeah,
people just like myself. I mean, I had migrated up this way just because, there was more stuff to do up here, and I was single, and I like to be up this way. But for families go after Katrina, there just wasn't enough to keep them established for a lot of people, so they moved up or moved somewhere else because of the jobs.
oh yeah.
But that's it, man. It was crazy. I mean, it's just wild times. And I mean, I don't wish that on anybody because it's a
No.
life-changing experience, especially for people who lost their homes and, some people did lose family members and, from certain, just certain things happen. And it
Yeah, I
just
mean that
was,
was my thing, and just like people asking me questions and watching There's a bunch of documentaries on it, of course.
yeah,
20 years, and I watched a few of them, and man, I mean, there's a little bit about Saint Bernard, just because it's right there, the Ninth Ward, so they talk about that a lot. Not much, there's a little bit about the Robin family and hiding out on the boats in Violet Canal, but there's really nothing on Plaquemines Parish, and there's nothing really on the
yeah.
Mississippi coast either, which I think is crazy because, in my opinion, the two most devastating areas were Plaquemines Parish and the Mississippi Gulf Coast. I mean,
Well, yeah,
both those places just got wiped out.
yeah, and I get it. I mean, look, years ago, when people would come fish with me, they ask me, or they'd say, "Where are you from?" or something. Well, you tell people New Orleans because if you told them
Oh,
Port
yeah,
Sulphur,
they don't.
they'd
Yeah,
be like,
exactly.
"Huh?
Hmm.
Where's that at?" I mean, they got no idea. So I kind of see how that happens, but yeah, I mean, it is kind of a disservice that you know we didn't have somebody really do a documentary on the people down where they were really wiped out. I
Yeah, I
mean,
just think
y-
unfortunately it's just like, it never really came back. So it's kind of like this, out of sight, out of mind thing for people. And they're like, there's nothing left to comparatively to beforehand. There's still us down there. There's a lot of with the new plants and all. There's going to be a lot of people down there, and there's still reasons for everything to be packed still, but it is crazy. Just, go look at some of those photos. I'll try and tag as much as I can when I drop this podcast in the morning, and it's pretty crazy. Shoot, if you have anything too, Shane, have you any photos or video
and that's
or anything?
another thing. Like I look for photos, and I don't know what I did with them. I don't know, like, because I think I had a digital camera at the time, but I don't remember. And honestly, because I was out there amongst it. I was in it, and I don't remember. I don't know where any photos are at.
Jeez.
It's like, I don't know. It's kind of like,
I wish you had some
GoPro
videos, some GoPro type videos of you running the marsh after.
That's what I know. We didn't have anything like that.
It was nothing like that.
I don't remember when I even got my first like digital camera, handheld camera, but, I know, man. It's
just crazy that 20 years of technology for everything, not just like cameras and all, but like forecasting storms. The most recent thing, we've had some bad ones. Isaac, Gustav was another one I remember. Ivan, I remember. We've had some bad ones, but Ida's probably the number one since Katrina, in my opinion, on our side of the state. And like, it's just crazy that, Ida was a bad one. Ida tore up the marsh. Anybody that's fished with us, they remember it, it came over one of the levees in Port Sulphur and then sat in the levee for days and, just wrecked everything. Put the Alliance refinery out of business because it was underwater and destroyed everything. And the wind was terrible at Ida, tore up a bunch of stuff, and still, like, nothing. It just could, when they talk about the perfect storm, it really was Katrina. And hopefully we don't ever have anything like that ever again.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. People get all caught up. It's like, people, and I get it. It's human nature. People want to brag. Oh, our storm was a category 20, and it. Well, you know what? A category 3, a 2, or 3 can do more damage than a 4 if it moves slower and at the right angle and comes in at the right tides. That's what people understand. It's not all about.
Katrina really was perfect in the direction it came. It literally made landfall with the high tide. That's what people, go back and look at that too. Which we had a super tide.
It's not just the direct wind speed saying it's a category this or that. Yeah, straight line wind speeds will tear stuff up, but the duration of how fast it's moving and how much water
it built in the Gulf. Katrina went from nothing, and 24 hours later was a 5 dead center of the Gulf. Just sat there and super slow.
It's just, you probably would have got more coverage out. Like, put it this way. If it didn't come through Plaquemines first, or Plaquemines wasn't there, and say New Orleans was sitting right out on the Gulf of Mexico, and it came straight into New Orleans like that, it would have been way worse.
Oh,
you know
absolutely.
what I'm saying? Way worse.
Yeah, and it was just so bad because of everything that happened in the city. It just created this. That's what people don't realize. They're like, "Why was it so bad?" I'm like, "Well, technology was so different. It happened so last minute. These evacuations happened so last minute, and a lot of the city stayed. A lot of people couldn't get out of there, and then just the sheer fact of like, if you think about our landscape from the Atlantic coast to Texas, there's not many major cities, and I know the city of New Orleans is a small city compared to all these other cities across the country, but it's the only place that's really close enough for something of that nature to come through. You got Miami. Could you imagine a 5 just going right through Miami? It would be devastating, but it just hasn't happened. Or, there's a couple close calls with Tampa, but that's basically what happened. And people are like, oh, city of New Orleans, it's inland 90 miles. Well, it's inland, it's right next to marsh. Marsh that's disappearing.
Water.
It's a bowl.
Yeah.
It's got levees. It really was the perfect storm, man. And I like I always say, I was young, but I literally lived my life before and after the storm. And that's Katrina. I'm sure you do the same. I'm sure
Yeah.
Dave says the same. We all say it. The storm. That was the storm.
Yeah. I mean, for us, like I said, everybody's, disasters everywhere impact people. But for us, that's the only one I've ever seen that has done anything like I saw, Katrina. That was it. I hadn't seen anything like that before, so. And hopefully don't get another one because we ain't
Hopefully
got a
not.
whole lot of protection out there. So
No, we
I'm
got a whole
fingers
lot less
crossed,
marsh.
I mean, and unfortunately, you hate to say it, but it ain't a matter of if, it's when. I mean, it's just where we live, and it's just like, tornadoes in the Midwest, or avalanches in the mountains, or forest fires. I mean, wildfires out west. I mean, it's where we live, man. It's part of it, and you just got to hope for the best.
Yep. I mean, it's all just living with nature, not against
Yep.
it. There's a whole lot of people in the government that want to live against it, and
Yep.
Katrina's storms like that show you don't win. Nobody wins.
No, you ain't gonna. How you gonna stop that, right? I mean,
Nope.
it is. You just got to prepare.
They want to put more levees up, and the water's got to go somewhere, man. It's either going to break it or go to the next poor place that unfortunately gets wrecked. All right, y'all. Well, the storytelling in me is probably saying that I should have let Shane go last in this and let him close it out. But as far as podcast goes and the way most of everybody listens to podcasts, if you made it this far, you're probably going to listen to this anyway. And if not, then Shane was a good one to end on. But here's my story on it. So, like I said, Shane and Dave are probably about 10 years older than me. It's crazy because 20 years ago, I was 11 years old. I had just started 6th grade. I had a week of school. So we went to school and went to middle schools. I went to T.H. Harris and Metairie, and I was in 6th grade. We had our first 5 days of school, like a normal year, and Saturday rolls around. They start talking about this storm crossing the tip of Florida. And, I'm young at the time, but I was always paying attention to stuff like that and weather and, fishing and weather just kind of went together. So I'd notice it. And it was just my mom and me and my 2 younger brothers. So I guess I pay attention to more than a normal 11-year-old would for things. But I just remember Saturday coming around, and then we were sitting around playing around the house or something like that. And we're starting to pick stuff up, and my mom's deciding whether we should leave or stay or go to my grandpa's house in Metairie. And we had left for 1 or 2 before, but, our whole family in general wasn't really much for leaving for storms. My mom talks about when she was super young and Hurricane Betsy and staying at my grandpa's house and the roof caving in, and it's just kind of, I don't know, man. You talk to a lot of people that are born and raised here, especially like 2 generations before me. They never left. And they didn't know, too, what was going on. I know things changed a lot, and even at that time. But I just remember being young and talking to a few people, and my mom going back and forth about leaving. And then finally, she started hearing things on the news, and you hear people start saying, Coast Guard telling people, write their Social Security numbers on your arm or body somewhere in case they have to identify bodies, and the weather statement coming out saying it's going to be total and utter devastation. Any and all buildings won't be standing anymore. Most of everywhere will be covered in water. I mean, pretty apocalyptic stuff, and still kind of waiting on there to be this mandatory evacuation, which there was late in the day, late in the period pre-Katrina. So, my mom told me, just like every other storm, I had a kind of a raised bed, a couple feet off the ground, and, had PlayStation, baseball stuff, glove, a couple fishing things, not much, just kid stuff. And I remember her saying, put everything up high, put it on your bed, and, when we get back, hopefully there's no water. If there is, it'll just be a little bit of water in the house, yada, yada, pull some carpet out, redo it, whatever. And I remember we got in the car, and I don't know exactly how long, man, but we sat in so much traffic. It took forever. I mean, it was such a late thing that they started telling people to get out, and this mandatory evacuation went through, and everybody left at the same time. I remember we ended up somewhere outside of Center, Alabama. My mom had some friends that had a family member that lived out there, and I could have done some research before and told you how long it actually takes to get there from where we lived in Kenner, Louisiana. But I don't know how long it took us to get there, 12 hours or something crazy. Whatever it is, it was double. So I grew up right there in Kenner, Louisiana, not far from the airport, not far from Lake Pontchartrain. Bike rides to both, And I remember being there and the day of Katrina, and like I said, still young. We went to check out some waterfall place and this little stream, and getting back, and everybody huddled up around a TV or a computer screen to watch what's going on, and not know what was going on too much, just fishing and having fun, being like, oh, this is a vacation, just we'll leave and go back like we always do. Nothing different. Leave for a couple days, go back, pick our stuff up, all good. Pick up some stuff around the yard, all good. And I remember, my mom kind of freaking out and hearing a few things from people back home. They're like, there's nothing to come home to. There's, water in the house, water everywhere in Kenner and Metairie, and the pumps didn't turn on, levees were breaking, seeing the chaos of the Superdome on the news, no power, no anything. And, I just remember we stayed there a couple more days, and I thought it was awesome just fishing. And what's really funny is there was this older guy there that was the grandfather of some of the people there, and that's kind of where I learned fly fishing from. I'd done it a little bit before with just a bluegill rods and all, and I remember he used to love making fiberglass rods and catching bluegill and stuff like that, and that's what we did, where we were doing that off the dock and all. And then I guess it kind of really hit when my mom was like, we're leaving, we're taking a drive, and not going back to school. It was like we're figuring out some other place to live for a while. And every summer we would go up to, usually we'd try to go up to some of my family's house in Long Island, New York. It was on my mom's side of the family, in Islip and some areas like that. So we just started heading up that way. And man, one of the things I remember the most was like stopping for gas at a couple places. And I remember one in particular. I have no clue where we were. If I just had a guess, I want to say New Jersey, because I remember it was just crazy traffic and cars and turnpikes. And I'm 11 years old. I got a map from a gas station. I'm sitting in the passenger seat trying to help my mom navigate. It's just her and three boys, 11, 9, and 6 at the time. So I'm trying to help her navigate with a map and a pen. I don't even know if we had MapQuest then. Jeez, what a timely storm this thing is, cracking like this outside my house while I'm talking about Katrina. But yeah, just trying to navigate with a map and a pen, and I don't even know if we had MapQuest at the time. I don't know. I just remember learning, just where we were and how to get there and how to get from A to B, and it's kind of crazy for my mom driving us around. And we had our dog too, which is another thing. And we didn't have much of anything. We packed maybe a day or two of clothes. Nothing. We didn't bring anything. We got in the car, and that's all we had. We had my mom's van and shirts on our back, and stuff for the dog, and she just kind of figured out along the way. We stayed at some hotels up and down the road. But getting back to that story, I just remember being in a gas station. Like I said, I don't have a clue where. I'd have to ask her. She would know. But I remember going in to pay for gas with her, and she was like, somebody paid the gas already. And I just remember this person, coming up to us, seeing it was just her and some kids. And I guess they saw a Louisiana plate and, telling us to grab some candy or something like that, and paid for that. And I remember like hugging my mom and saying good luck, and just going a couple times we had stuff like that happen. Just people, I guess, just seeing the Louisiana plate, man, and know what's going on. And there's a lot of bad stuff in this world and a whole lot of bad people, I know that, but man, there really is some really good people, and I think inherently people want to do good things like that. I mean, I know I always do, and I try to help out when I can. But yeah, so pretty much we did that. We went to Long Island, New York, stayed with some of my mom's family over there for a bit, and I know we were in kind of a more crowded house with people, and there was just a lot of us, and I mean, we didn't really know what the hell was going on. We didn't know how long we were going to be there or what was going on, and my mom said, we're going to go stay. She got a call from some of her friends in Connecticut, and she's like, got the kids signed up for school, got a place for you to stay, come on up here, and so we did that. I mean, pretty awesome that my mom had people like that, and we ended up in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, of all places, in this beautiful area, kind of up, they call it a hill up there. We thought it was a freaking mountain coming from South Louisiana, but pretty cool. Went to school up there. I went to this school called Reed Intermediate. I think it was just 5th and 6th grade at the time. It was a big school, I remember. There's tons of people for just 2 grades. My 2 younger brothers, Austin and Zane, went to Sandy Hook Elementary. And I remember we played fall baseball there. Somebody just sent Yankees tickets to us. I don't know if that was something that somebody knew somebody or what, but I just remember them being like, we were big into baseball at the time, and baseball and fishing was really all I cared about. And I mean, who bigger than Derek Jeter and all? And I just remember them being like, "You want to go to a Yankees game?" And of course, we went and did that, and went to the old Yankees Stadium, and it was pretty awesome. But a lot of stuff like that. We ended up there for a while. We were in the newspaper up there. They did a little article talking to my mom and talking to us. We played fall baseball. I remember people thought we talked funny, and I thought they were saying all these weird things like soda pop and you all and stuff. And it's kind of the first time we were really around a lot of different people like that. And then one day my mom was just like, crazy for her, she was like trying to work up there and trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And one day she was like, "What do y'all want to do?" And I was like, "I want to go home." I just remember I remember wanting to go home and wanting to fish. That was my thing. I was like, it's great up here, and we did some fishing. Those people treated us like, kings and queens, and it was pretty awesome how just everybody treated us up there. But I remember wanting to go home, wanting to go fish, and I knew it was gonna be rough. But like I said, being young at the time, nobody knew what to expect. So anyway, we packed up the car one day. I think it was right before Halloween, and we were kind of holding out to see maybe we'll see some snow. It's funny to talk about snow. We just saw 12 inches of snow last January. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life, and down here. But we had never seen anything like that. It had literally snowed the Christmas Day 2004 before the storm, the following year. And that was the most snow I'd ever seen in my life at the time, and it barely stuck to the ground. But so we left. We headed back home. It was sometime around Halloween, I remember, and drove the whole way back, all through the hills of Tennessee and North Carolina and all, and it was pretty cool doing a lot of that. But I remember we made it to Mississippi, and my mom was going back and forth we're gonna have to take the causeway, the twin span bridge in Slidell, which was just completely wiped out. And I remember I think it was Bow Brothers was contracted to finish it or whatever, and they finished it way ahead schedule, and we drove on the twin span hours after they had repaired it. And when I say repaired it, it was repaired. It was not, rebuilt. But, we got to a point where we were an hour out, and she was like, "Well, I guess if it's not going to fall, if it hadn't fallen yet, it's not going to fall down." So we did that, and I remember driving across the twin span, and then just the darkness, man. All of New Orleans East, just dark. It was Slidell's dark. Just no power still. They had generators and a couple cops at one gas station off of each exit in the east, and then I don't think we went home because I think we went to my uncle's house in St. Rose because he didn't have water, and we stayed there for a little while, and then we were waiting on everybody was waiting on a FEMA trailer and all that, and we had I don't know, a couple feet of water in the house, and my uncle had already ripped everything out, and pretty much everything's on the front lawn. And my uncle had found a pop-up camper, and we slept in that for a couple nights, like a legit tent, like pop-up camper in the front yard. And I remember sleeping in that, and then going back to school, and just, there wasn't any, like, expectations for anything. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what to do. Just a pile of trash, and I say a pile of trash, a pile of our stuff, like, everything from toys and baseball gloves and bats. And I remember my PlayStation 2. I was so happy about getting one of those when I was younger, and that was just, all that was ruined. All the furniture, our whole life in that house, just sitting on the front porch, and it sat forever just because it took them forever to clean up all the trash around here. So a lot of that stuff just sat. There's nobody picking up that stuff, and there was really nobody to do any work either. My mom had a few people doing some work. I know my uncle was helping. And so I'd pretty much, at a very young age, learned about sheetrock and doing floors and whatever else it took. And then I think we got a FEMA trailer a couple months later. Stayed in that for almost a year or so. I remember, man, there being some bad storms in the spring. We get those bad storms in like April, like shaking that trailer back and forth. And then my mom finally, I think, just had enough. And once we had power and like a working AC and all back at the house, we pretty much lived in a house with no walls for a while. And I remember me and my brothers thought it was so cool. We could just like throw a tennis ball through every room of the house from the front to the back. And I'm sure she didn't think any of it was cool, but I guess it's one thing good about being young at the time. But yeah, doing that, I remember fishing was just like Shane said, like Dave said, was just so freaking good, man. I remember going down to what was left of Bechel's with my cousin Sean and my Uncle Darrell after the storm, and them having to get everything, ice, water, gas, whatever, way up the road, because driving down the road, there was nothing. There was no gas stations, no power, no lights. I remember driving through some checkpoints to get down there, and having to go around the checkpoints. I remember a couple times to so we can go down there and go fish. And it was just, places were just crushed, but the fishing was so good, man. I remember just going, right up Felicity Bayou and like First, Second Bay and all that stuff, and just crushing speckled trout all fall. And I mean, everything was just so good. But yeah, slowly picked up the pieces, got out of the FEMA trailer, got everything back to somewhat normal at the house, and continued on with life for a while. And that's pretty much it. Went from all that to somewhat of a normal. I don't think it ever became normal. I think it just became the new normal. I don't think there ever was a, getting back to that normal pre-storm, but that's kind of the way it was for a while, and it was a pretty wild thing. And like I said, wouldn't wish that upon anybody. Wouldn't, don't know what you'd change with that. There's not much you could do about anything, but pretty wild, pretty crazy stories from everybody you hear talk about it. But that's ours. That's Shane, Dave, and I. That's our stories for it. Nothing really, glamorous about any of it. Nothing probably that you hadn't heard of before, but people had asked me about it for years. People had asked Shane about it all the time, and people always asking Dave about it. And I was like, well, might as well put it on and put it out there. It's been 20 years. Hard to believe that, but that's what it is. And hopefully we get back to doing some more regular stuff for you. Let me know, some emails. I've gotten quite a few emails from a couple people. I don't check that email near enough. I know I have to, but I really enjoy seeing the emails from y'all saying, get back to it. Want to hear some more. I've heard a few different guys, and I'll shout y'all out at the next one. But yeah, I mean, we'll get back to it. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you didn't like it. I don't really care if not, so too bad. But if you did like it, let me know, as usual. But I'll see you at the next one. And as always, use that hashtag one for Louisiana out there. You know, throw a fish back for us. Pick up some trash. You know, make this place the awesome place that it should be. And especially talking about stuff like Katrina, man, just help a few people out. Goes a long way. We wouldn't be anywhere if people wouldn't have reached out and helped us when I was a kid, and Dave and Shane, and I mean even recent storms, and Isaac and Ida, and people reached out to help me for Ida and reached out to help other people, and it's kind of what people need in that situation. So thank you.